Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries. I'm John, and today we're going to be talking about level drain and why it sucks. Okay, so as you've probably gathered, I'm not joined by Hannah in this episode. Unfortunately, she's working late, but we're hoping to maybe squeeze out a voicemail episode as a bonus later on today if we get time. And if she's got any thoughts on this, I'm sure she'll chip them in at the end of that episode. So, level drain. It's probably one of my least favourite things in the OSR sort of sphere. I'm mainly talking about OSR games here because that's the games that I like to play and the games I have most experience with playing and running. So, if you're not familiar with level drain, essentially it's the idea that in a level-based system like D&D, there are creatures, normally certain types of undead like vampires and stuff like that, that can effectively suck your life essence out of you, often with a mere touch or some sort of touch-based attack. This has the effect of reducing you in level. So, and you basically have to earn all that XP back again to get yourself back up to the level you once were. Now, obviously, this can be very dangerous, since if you hit 0 levels effectively, normally that's you brown bread. And even if you're like a 20th level character, it's probably doing more than one level of damage. I believe, according to the Old School Essentials Classic Fantasy Monsters, a vampire, if it successfully touches you, causes you to lose 2 experience levels, or hit dice if it's a monster. So even if you're like some level 20 like Brobdingnagian badass, then you can only get hit 10 times by a vampire, and that's you done. Now, all of that'll be fine. I can hear some of you already going,
"Oh, but John, don't you like the deadliness in OSR? I thought that was one of the things you loved, that it didn't have like a million saves like 5e to avoid death and stuff like that."
And you'll be absolutely right. I don't mind a bit of danger in my OSR games, whether I'm playing or gemming. In fact, I quite like that whole sort of like life is cheap vibe, especially when you're at lower levels. And if it was just a case of, you get hit by some undead badass with that level drain, it killed you, fair enough. What I don't like is if you get hit like a couple of times and you lose levels, the actual sort of loss is fine. It's the slog you then have to do to get back up to a level you were already at. Let's face it, D&D as a level-based system, effectively your levels and your XP that you gain represent your steady progression in power. You get more abilities, spells and stuff like that as you go up in level. More hit points, maybe your base attack improves, and obviously you get like items and such like. Certain items can only be used by like certain level characters, certain abilities can only be used by certain level characters. Now, if you get hit by a level drain and it reduces you from like, I don't know, let's say a level 3 character back down to a level 1 character, effectively all that's doing is resetting the game back to level 1, really, certainly for that player character. Now, it's not an exact sort of analogy, because if you're adventuring with other level 3 players and you're level 1, you will tend to level up faster because you'll be facing more dangerous threats. You'll get more XP on all of that good stuff. However, obviously you'll be far more fragile than your companions. So you'll have to play it a bit sort of cautious, which is absolutely fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, it can be very demoralizing having sort of spent all these sessions clawing your way up, getting that XP, going on these adventures to get yourself to like level 5 or level 3, whatever, and suddenly you get one hit by a vampire and you're effectively back to square one, and you've got to start grinding your way through all of that again. Now, I'm not saying that there's not potentially rich roleplay fodder for that. If you want to get your angst on and be like bemoaning your fate, or the GM's wanting to throw you a quest or something like that you can do to restore those levels, then that's absolutely fine. Fill your boots. But without that, you're just looking at, so all of those sessions I'd done and I'd got under my belt, I was looking forward to getting to level 10 or whatever. Now I've effectively got to do all of that again that I've already gone through. And quite often we hear people, when they're talking about OSR games, saying they like particular sort of areas of play. So you'll often hear people saying like, there's very few games that run to level 10 or get into the sort of like Lord level play. Well, the chances of that happening are probably even less. If you're sort of part of the way there, then you effectively have to repeat a lot of the stuff you've already done to try and get yourself back up to that level. And I've found in past that this has tended to discourage me from using monsters that have level drain in my adventures, which is a shame, because a lot of the really cool undead like vampires and such like have level drain, but I've tended to sort of steer clear of them a bit just because I couldn't be bothered with all the bookkeeping and the potential drudgery of people having to like go through level drain. However, recently in my Smoke and Snow OSE game, I wanted to bring in a sort of vampire related plot line, and one of the player characters inevitably got hit by this vampire. Now, to be honest, because they weren't supposed to run into the vampire at this point, or rather, I hadn't predicted they would. I mean, it's a sandbox game, so they can run into them at whatever time they want. But they ran into them a bit earlier than I expected, so I'd not really had a chance to think about what I was going to do with level drain. So one of the player characters got hit by the level drain, and I said, all right, well, don't worry about it for now, and we'll work out what's going to happen at the end of the session. When we got to the end of the session, the player wasn't too keen, unsurprisingly, on like repeating those levels, and I've got to say, as you've probably gathered, I'm not really keen on it either. So we had a bit of a discussion as a group about what we wanted to do regarding this, because I want to carry on with this plot line and carry on using vampires, but none of us seem to be particularly a fan of the level drain as written in the rules. Luckily for me, in Knock issue 1, there is an article called Energy Drain, Does It Suck? I think you can probably guess what my opinion is on that subject. Yes, it does. It very much does suck. But what they're positing in this very small article written by Gaber Lux, and apologies if I've not said your name right, is that instead of draining levels, when you're hit by undead who would normally be able to perform energy drain, it drains your constitution instead. So the way the article puts it is, wights, wraiths and other lesser undead drain 1d6 constitution, spectres, vampires and other greater undead drain 2d4 constitution, shadows drain 1d6 strength. Ability scores lost recover at a rate of 1 point per day. A character drained to 0 in a score is lost and becomes an undead of the given type. And then at the bottom it says, with these changes in effect, undead represent a greater immediate threat, but do not damage a long-term character viability. And we discussed this a little bit amongst my group, and this is what we decided to go with. And I very much agree with the sort of summarisation that Gabe has put at the bottom of this article. Obviously, if you're getting an attribute reduced, even if you roll maximum on your attribute, you can have 18 tops. So if you get hit by a vampire and I roll a couple of hits with maximum constitution drain, that could be like 16 constitution you're looking at losing there, and very few people are going to have 16 constitution, so they become much more deadly in whatever combat they're in. You know, if you haven't got a chance to rest or get away from them, they become much more of an immediate threat. However, because your scores recover at a rate of 1 point a day, you do always have the option of, if you make it out of the combat, you can just rest up for a little bit, you can recover, you can still get your angsty roleplay about having your life drained out if you want, but it doesn't mean you've got to spend like another like dozen plus sessions retreading old ground, slogging your way back up that XP chart and such like. So to my mind, this is just a much more playable and friendly way of doing it. So, and also for me, it's now reopened up these monsters that I really like, but have sort of shied away from because I couldn't be dealing with the level drain mechanics. Another way I've done it in games, because obviously that's not the only way, is I've had it literally age the characters. So when they get hit by a certain type of undead, they'll gain normally like a dice worth of age, and that tends to go hand in hand with like maximum age scores for the various different races. So obviously if you're an elf and you get hit by an undead and it ages you physically, that's not quite so bad as if you're a human and you get hit by it and you get aged, because humans don't live anywhere near as long as elves. But again, that's not quite so immediately dangerous, but it does have the side effect of like there's really nothing you can do about it. So if you're like a 30-year-old adventurer and you get hit by a vampire enough to like age you to a 60-year-old, you're stuck as a 60-year-old unless you get some massively powerful magic to reduce that. So that's one way I've done it, but I'm interested to see how this sort of constitution / attribute drain from knock number 1 works. But I thought I'd put this out there. My players seem a lot more happy with this idea of the constitution drain. Let me know what you think about energy drain. Maybe leave a call in if you want. If you want to get in touch with us, you can leave us a voicemail message using SpeakPipe, or if you have trouble with that, you can use the Anchor link on our old site. There's links to those in the description below, or you can send us an email to rddrpgpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll maybe feature your call-ins in a future episode. Thanks very much for listening. Take care, and whatever you're playing, have fun. We'll see you soon.